Well, it's not really all that early, but I wasn't even going to do one, but uh, I was I was watching a Midnight's Edge video about the Captain America Brave New World officially flopped now, and that whole overview, and decided I'd share it on X. And as I was doing it, I noticed I suddenly jumped from 860 or 80 something. See, I don't even keep up to 1,000.15 followers or subscribers on YouTube. And I was like, wow, how'd that happen? So I was like, oh, well, need to do more of these streams to qualify for the monetization and all that. So, well, yeah, but I'm usually jumping into bed by now, so I'm very tired. But did come across this article concerning Captain Kirk, and so I'm going to read that, and then we'll get to drawing it, and I'll draw Kirk here. Pretty similar to the thumbnail. That's an old drawing I did, but it'll be the same for this, and then I'll put it in Photoshop, color it, and all that goody gumdrop stuff. But maybe I can squeeze an hour of just doing that. So let me go ahead and get to the article from Cosmic Book News about this other little tidbit concerning Captain Kirk possibly returning to Star Trek. Make sure I got everything up to date and snuff and good. Yeah. Okay. So this, of course, is some AI fan art thing, but it does refer to a story about Kirk returning via the Borg, which apparently Shatner wrote a novel concerning that idea. But anyway, the headline is William Shatner approached to resurrect Kirk in Star Trek Return. So William Shatner may be preparing to boldly return where no man has returned before. Well, yes, of course, there's been other resurrections. But anyway, the 93-year-old legend revealed that he's been approached to resurrect Captain Kirk, proving that not even death or a pile of rocks can keep a Starfleet captain down. Shatner confirmed to his 2.4 million followers he is in talks with Paramount to return to Star Trek. So here's the copy of the tweet with all the emojis. But it says, well, I don't know if you've heard. I've been approached to resurrect Kirk. It's all still up in the air. Or is it buried under some rocks? Whichever the case, I'm waiting to hear what the folks at Paramount have to say. So that's the deal. Seems something is afoot, probably not the least of which was the response to the unification video that came out not long ago, which did depict what appeared to be a resurrection of Captain Kirk, able to visit Spock on his deathbed for one last time, that kind of thing. But geez, sure waited long enough for something. But if it were to be, and it would be on some level, but who could craft a satisfying vignette or what have you for something like this now, just to give a shot in the arm to the Trek franchise, which has suffered horribly under the current iteration over the past I don't know, it's getting close to 10 years now, I guess. So don't know, but William Shatner made his final appearance over 30 years ago in Star Trek Generations, where Captain James T. Kirk dies. He's presumed dead early in the movie when he's caught in an energy ribbon called the Nexus, but it turns out he was actually trapped inside it. Decades later, Captain Picard finds him in the Nexus and convinces him to leave. The two then battle Dr. Soren and Kirk ultimately dies after falling from a collapsing bridge while saving millions of lives. His final words? Oh my. Star Trek has brought characters back from the dead before. Of course, Spock and Search for Spock. So a Kirk resurrection wouldn't be out of the question. Shatner has written novels where Kirk is revived using Borg technology, referred to as the Shatnerverse. Of course, time travel could be another way, or even the multiverse. Worth a mention is that Skydance Media is supposed to be purchasing Paramount, which is expected to go through this spring. Skydance Media is owned by David Ellison, where Matt McCloyne, writing this article, has been told he's a big TV film buff, so a Star Trek reboot could be in the works in some form. Paramount recently canceled STD and ended Star Trek Lower Decks, but before that left, Discovery was wide from canon. The spin-off movie, Section 31, pooped the bed on arrival. Familiar Old World Season 3 will be released this year, and the series has been renewed for Season 4, which I hadn't really heard, but I think their working plan was to have at least 5 seasons for each of their shows. I don't know, I guess because of the 5-year mission idea, or it's they just came up with the number 5, and that's that. But anyway, so that would be, so it's season 4. So then you got to hurry up and do a 5th one so you can wrap that up. I don't know if that would be some contractual deal going forward where Skydance would be obligated to finish off Strange New Worlds to give it a 5th season. But all you can say about Strange New Worlds is it wasn't as bad as Discovery, but that's not saying much at all. In fact, out of 2 seasons, there's really only one good episode, that Lotus Eaters episode they did, which is really the only one that came across like a Star Trek episode. And Captain Pike actually got to be, the captain. So, yeah, it's been pretty poor. It's just all decorated to kind of sort of resemble the old show, which, but it doesn't, that sort of thing. But obviously having William Shatner come back, and if they crafted some sort of really that unification thing is pretty perfect just in that, but to do something like that, to give Trek a shot in the arm, but it would have to be something respectful and that's credible within the narrative of the characters and whatnot. And then what? Where does it go? Why would he be back? What does this lead to? And how do you do? You would obviously be a handoff to a new crew, a new Enterprise, and all that sort of thing going forward for Star Trek. And I can't imagine what it could do so that it doesn't just come across as the gimmick. You gotta pretty it up, and I don't know, add more icing to the cake so it doesn't come across like that. And it's something that somebody with ability should have thought of some time ago. But it's hard to say no if Shatner's, up for it and wants to do it. And obviously there's all kinds of stories. He had been approaching them, or they had been approaching him back and forth over the years about ideas. He was supposed to have done an appearance as the Mirrorverse Kirk in Enterprise, and that would have been interesting. They ended up doing their own thing with it, but that would have been an interesting thing and stuff like that. I think he even suggested perhaps playing Chris Pine's father in those movies or something like that, but here he'd be playing Captain Kirk, brought back from the great beyond. And I don't know if they're thinking of similar to Unification, to where he's providing scenes where he's been de-aged and everything. Who knows? I mean, with the rapid expanse of CGI and AI technologies, essentially he could lend his voice to a digital Kirk and whatnot. But for the most part, to craft a scene that gives you this, sort of relay handoff there for one last chance for Trek to be reborn. And if somebody with better skills than what they've had lately can craft a narrative that's satisfying in that, and certainly to be respectful to Mr. Shatner, um, would be an awesome thing, you know. But it's so easy for them to mess up, you know. But I understand the impetus to doing it. It's just I don't know that we want to see him be a Borg, though. I don't know about that. But I don't know. Maybe, but I remain kind of dubious because look, I've seen a lot of this bad Trek over the years, and I'd hate to see him get smeared by that. In which case, the unification video will probably do, you know. Well, all right. So now I'll go ahead and start drawing this. Oh, I had this on the whole time. See, I ruined it. Let's see here. Cancel that and go into drawing. Captain. There. So, of course, we'll primarily draw him in his classic form from the old show. All kinds of different eras have happened over the years. You know, it's interesting about the motion picture which sets up the timeline premise that the TV show's 5-year mission had occurred. And then I suppose, you add in the cartoon. Well, that would kind of finish out the 5-year mission. So there you go. They had their 5-year mission in outer space. And then they come back, and probably a new crew was to take over or what have you. Kirk gets promoted to admiral. McCoy probably leaves the service at that point. Spock returns to Vulcan to deal with, the experiences on the Enterprise that it's told that it had on him and all that. And they kind of go their separate ways for a while. And then when you get to the motion picture, the Enterprise is being refitted. It's a new era for the Federation, so things look different. It's some time has passed, but the idea is that not a lot of time, and they have their motion picture story with V'ger and all that. The crew is reunited, and after that, they go on new adventures. Now, there were some novels. I think, Marvel published a comic book series at the time that was set in that era. So it was like, it's the regular adventures that they would have again on the Enterprise. And so by the time they get to Wrath of Khan, the suggestion there is that a lot more time has gone on in between those two eras than would be suggested just by the timeline of when the movies were made. So, technically speaking, Kirk or Shatner or whatever was playing a younger Kirk in a motion picture, and then he's much older in Wrath of Khan, which is the premise of the movie, that he's getting depressed. He doesn't have it, feel like his best years are behind him and all that sort of stuff. It's his birthday, all of that. And so it's the themes of the movie, of course, are dealing with confronting death and one's mortality and age and all that. Culminated by not just with the death of Spock, but the birth of the Genesis planet and so on and all that. And so so there's this whole era there of a second 5-year mission. Of course, before they did the motion picture, which happened primarily in response to the success of Star Wars at the time, they were going to do a new TV series because the reruns of the original Trek show was so popular. You know, it was doing better ratings than newer shows, and they're like, oh, well, we should just do more Star Trek. You know, so they were working on that. They got everybody to come back except Leonard Nimoy. He was not interested in returning to the TV show. Once the movie idea came to me, well, I was more interested in that, and of course the money and everything. So that's how they were able to reunite the original crew. But they were going to go with a different Vulcan character and all that. All that the templates like that were abandoned and later reused for the next generation. So instead of a Vulcan, you had Data and so on. But at the time, that's what they were doing. And so it's kind of suggests to some extent with motion picture that some of that mission did occur. And by the time you come back for Wrath of Khan, it's been some time since that happened. But it's the sort of thing that's best left up to novelizations and, if anything, an animation series, you know, rather than trying to recapture it and all that. Because the thing about Star Trek, and which was later proved by the next generation, is that it can continue. You just get a new crew, and that's really all they have to do. Even in the extent, like I said, a return of William Shatner in some form or fashion would be a shot in the arm for it. But ultimately, you just start over. And I don't mean like reboot or what have you. I just mean you set it in a later time. You have a new Starship Enterprise. It's a new crew. They're on a mission in deep space, and you go from there. A lot of the other franchises and whatnot that have been damaged, and Star Wars and Doctor Who, it'd be much more difficult to do that, especially for Star Wars. But with Star Trek, you just sort of never mention the stupid crap that's happened since. and you're good. And then you're going to need quality writers who can craft this stuff, science fiction concept, and for a TV series, not films. I mean, I suppose they're going to want the film franchise or whatnot, and that would be two different entities in my way of thinking. But a television series would be the base and would hold it, because it's what made it. It's the episodic storytelling, that sort of thing. Episodic, to a point, and then you have some arcs and whatnot, and a certain continuity that you refer to, and certain events happened within the show that would have a lasting effect on a character, and things like that. But this business of like what STD did, and just pretty much all of them except for Strange New Worlds, at the very least, they did do episodic stories. They're great, but they did do it. And but instead of having just one idea that you stretch over, I don't know, 10 episodes, where it's a cheat, you know. It's and I mean, old Star Trek would do in one episode what STD has to do in 10, you know, and it's just it pales in comparison. And a lot of things go. It's a generational thing. I mean, you're talking about the background and lives of the writers of shows back then. A lot of them, uh, they were in World War II and fought in Korea and stuff like that, you know, and uh, some of them had seen the Depression, so on and so forth. Uh, it's a different experience. Uh, Even if some of the writers, you know, some of the writers are women and whatnot, but they lived all that. They were there. They knew those stories and they had experiences on that end. Uh, that's not the case lately, and certainly uh, a lot of the writers they would gravitate towards for these projects today. Uh, and in some cases, just on the end product, and you know, I guess I could be fair to it, was it the final product of what was written or what have you? It might have been overseen by showrunners or what have you, and that sort of thing. So it can't, maybe it's not entirely the writer's fault, but um, a lot of it just comes across as barely adequate for daytime soap operas, you know? I mean, even that, those tended to have some idea of where they're going and stuff. Um, but for the ideas and the concepts of science fiction and whatnot that was explored in shows like Trek, even in its weaker shows, were always very solid and sound. Whereas in the current iterations, it's virtually non existent. Now, a lot of different things occurred, and you have to conclude that a lot of the, which brings it back to Midnight's Edge, they did all those videos discussing the problem of the situation that the rights to Trek had been split up between the two entities when the company split up and all that, uh, which certainly didn't help the situation for when Bad Robot and Secret Hideout showed up and that sort of thing, which of course is no fault of theirs as far as the rights situation. But even with it, it created the only solution would have been, well, you just got to come up with your own track, and you can do that by just setting it in a an even further timeline than what's been seen, and that means beyond the next generation timeline and that sort of thing. But of course, they didn't have the guts to do that. They wanted it to tie it into established brand. So, hey, how can I exploit established brand if I practically just got to build one of my own? That's where it is. So that's why you get into things like, oh, well, Spock had a sister and all this stuff. Uh, and then we'll reimagine Captain Kirk and so on, and wherever else they were going to go with it. But another thing that, when it came to Star Trek, was its fandom. That was the butt of a lot of jokes, you know, but the main joke being just how dedicated and serious they were about it. So it boggles the mind rather, to think that you were going to get something past that group of people, you know, with this, oh yeah, that they won't notice. It kind of looks like the Enterprise. It's good enough. It's like, no. It's not going to work. So when you start off a show like Discovery and say, well, it's like 10 years before Kirk took command of the Enterprise. Well, the thing about that is we've already seen it. So, the old show gave you a view because they used the footage of the canceled pilot of The Cage for the show Menagerie. And in that one, they said that story took place 13 years ago. So there you go. You got more than 10 years before Kirk is in command of the Enterprise and all that. So it's not like you can just do whatever you want. There's certain parameters and things already set within it. Of course, if you don't want to deal with that, well, you can skip ahead. But you didn't want to skip ahead because you wanted to take advantage of established lore without having to really think of anything of your own. And the result is, well, something that was not even competent enough for CW superhero soap opera, which actually, I've said this a time or two, the Flash show was actually pretty good for a while. Certainly better than anything STD did. And then, of course, that Lois and Superman show, that was a really great show. I know everybody's stunned to see CW logo on it, but they did a good job. It's too bad it had to end, but anyway, STD never got anywhere near anything like that. And apparently had no intention of trying, And finally, when it looks like it's pretty much all over, what does Kurtzman do? Section 31. This was supposed to be his magnum opus, I guess. I don't know. It was bizarre. But, well, that's what he wanted to do. Okay. And at the time I did my review of it, I appreciate the fact that it was just a movie because it was supposed to be a TV series. And I don't know if the plot of that movie was supposed to be the plot of the series, but I imagine it was because that's pretty much what they would do. They had enough material for a movie. So you had this thing, they had to go get the thing. It's very important. The thing can destroy everything, the thing. And it's been 8 or 10 episodes to do that. Whereas in the movie form, well, it's a little bit better. It's not as annoying as it would have been as 8, 10 episodes or what have you. So I had to give it something, so I can give it that. That was nice. But it was stupid. And there again, they drop in characters from the past show with Rachel Garrett and all that. You just use the name. And of course, thanks to Lord Dex, we know that, no, that's not the Garrett you saw in Next Generation. This is some alternate universe Rachel Garrett, who, the more I think about it, in whatever timeline they were supposed to be in, it couldn't have been her anyway. She wouldn't have even been born yet, I don't think. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's over. All right. So there's the drawing. Now the next step would be to put it in Photoshop. And that'll be the next step. But first, what do I have here? Oh, no, I don't want to play that. I don't want to play that. No, not that. Gee, I really don't have anything. Well, I guess there is the mystery of who killed Buddy, an old cartoon I did for the Rob Saul show a long time ago. Yeah. So we'll play that, and I'll have this put in to Photoshop to be colored. Yeah.
Who killed Buddy the rabbit?
So we've got a dead rabbit. And as the gravedigger's burying it, he notices it's got a broken neck. How'd that happen? One word. Homicide.
Why would anyone kill Buddy?
Seems this Buddy the rabbit lived with quite a few people in that house there. First of all, you got Rob Saul.
No, I wouldn't hurt that little bunny. I mean, my daughter loved that rabbit. I wouldn't have anything to do with that.
I don't know what to make of this guy. I mean, right off the bat, I assumed he was gay. Turns out, though, that his alibi was that he was up all night for about 8 hours talking to some Felicia Fierce lady. And yet, he claims he's not in love with her.
Look, just because I talk to her a lot and I want to have sex with her all the time and I just want to be with her, that's not being in love. Come on, no.
If you can figure this guy out, you're a smarter man than I am. Then there's Ileana.
No, I didn't do it. When that was supposed to happen, I was occupied with a man. 'Cause I cannot pleasure myself, you know? I mean, that's what men are for anyway.
Now that's a likely story. But then again, what kind of psychosis is going on where you never pleasure yourself? Yeah, I gotta keep my eye on this one. Finally, we've got Maya. That's got guilty written all over it. The homicide investigation takes hard work and plenty of experience. Luck hardly has anything to do with it. And speaking of luck, look at poor Buddy. He had 4 rabbit feet. And look where that got him. In a hole in the backyard, that's where.
Who killed Buddy? Tonight on Investigation Discovery.
Sometimes I feel fat and unattractive. But then I go shop at Walmart, where the average customer is at least 400 pounds, and I'm nowhere near in that ballpark, so I feel great. Thank you, Walmart.
Yes, Walmart, where you can simply look around and feel better about yourself. Unless, of course, you're a regular.
This is your ass. This is your ass in prison. Any questions? This has been a public service announcement reminding you that if you do the crime, you will do the time. Hard time.
Teenage gang debs. They all talk, fight, and love just one way. Dirty. They're as mean and vicious as the cement jungle they live in. Teenage gang debs, the go-go girls who go too far. Kick-happy, thrill-hungry, always reckless, and willing. From backroom binges to back alley rumbles, anything goes. As long as it's violent. They respect no law but the code of the gang and swear their allegiance in blood. Underage, oversexed, girls who won't take no for an answer. Teenage gang debs.
You were on my gun. Come and touch me. Come here. Come I ain't driving crazy. It was on my goddamn ass. I went to the other lane. Get out of my way. Contest!
It's terrible when things like that happen, isn't it? Oh, well, I guess, watch where you're going, or, don't go picking fights with people you don't really, well, with anybody, really, I guess. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Here, back to Kirk. So here I have him in Photoshop. I could have done better than this, but, well, I did the best I could. I got to make it a bit more gold in color, not just yellow. So that's the color of the shirt. As I recall, they seem to get a little better material towards the final season of the show. But it was over by then. And had some, I think it was Turnabout Intruder was the last one they shot. I don't know if maybe it was the last one they broadcast. I can't remember. Basically, the story was some crazy ex-girlfriend of Kirk's that never got over him decided to swap bodies with him. So Kirk was in her body and she was in his, and intended to take over the ship, which she did. It's a pretty funny episode. But of course, in the premise of it was she was upset because they said that women couldn't be captains of the ship. So by today's standards, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't that they would have? I always thought you could look back at it that was just in her head, because she was clearly psychotic in this story, and she was obsessed with Kirk and never got over him, and that sort of thing. And that's how it unfolded. And so you could just put it up that, well, for the most part, the story did take place. It's just her view of the situation was not accurate. But that's one where, there's Kirk. He's in his girlfriend's body, not in the way he liked to be. And but no one's going to believe him. They just think, well, it's that crazy woman. So then it convinces Spock to do the mind meld. And of course, once he did, of course, Spock can read their mind and says, holy crap, that's Captain Kirk in there. Then they had a whole trial and everything, because they started convincing other people like McCoy and everything, and decided to well, it's mutiny. They're all going to be executed. And they're like, hey, wait a minute, And of course, she was losing her grip or whatever in total, of course, and lost control of Kirk. And as a result, whatever the alien magic spell or whatever the hell it was broke, and they went back to their respective bodies and all that. But it was really creepy because she was being helped by this guy who helped her because he was in love with her, even though she was obviously still hung up on Kirk. And so even after she switched bodies, she's in Kirk's body, is like coming on to him to get him to do what she wanted him to do. Is it? I don't know. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, that might have been the last one that aired, or if it was, or if it really was the last one they shot. I can't remember. And then, they all moved on and figured, well, that was that. And it was a job for, 3 years. And now we got to go elsewhere. And of course, Leonard Nimoy got typecast and all that. And he wasn't thrilled about that. And for a while there, he just kind of hated the idea of being associated with it. But it ended up giving them all a new career. And really, it's the strange thing about that is the typecasting would happen to quite a few people who were stars of shows in the 60s and whatnot. But most notably was, of course, William Shatner and Adam West. They would show up in different things, Columbos and stuff like that. But it was a struggle. Then, of course, the resurgence of Trek pretty much set Shatner up for life for the most part. I mean, he did T.J. Hooker and stuff like that. Then got to do Denny Crane, which was really good. So, he says, yeah, he's got ability, it wasn't just Captain Kirk. Stuff like that. And the thing about it was that convention circuit was quite lucrative for him. And it was kind of like when it came to that, it was him and Adam West were like big stars in that, because they were part of that era of beloved classic shows. And Shatner's like the last one. I think he only did like one Columbo for the original run, and then when Columbo came back, he did because he was like a movie star in the first one, and then the 90s Columbo, I think he was like playing like a Rush Limbaugh type guy or something like that. Some kind of talk show host that was very popular, but turned to murder. And then, of course, Columbo figured it out. And the usual thing, the villain always thinks they're going to outsmart Lieutenant Columbo because, he puts on this act that he's a bungling idiot, and this will be easy. But in truth, he was luring them into the trap. From day one, he probably already suspected him. Little did he know. The silly little man in the raincoat was actually a mastermind. I can't remember. Wasn't there an episode where Columbo kind of looked the other way because he felt so bad for the killer? And I remember there was this old lady who killed this guy because she felt he had. I I guess she suspected him of having killed her daughter, or at least drove her to her death, or something like that, and that he was this a-hole, and she never forgave him for it, and ended up killing him by trapping him in her closet, which was airtight, and so he suffocated in there, and then they came back and left and went on some vacation or whatever, and when they come back, they say, "Oh no, how did he get in there? Whoopsies," and that kind of thing. But of course, didn't fool Columbo. Oops. And I don't know. I think she ended up going to prison, or if he just decided to not report it or something. That might have been the one. I can't remember. But of course, the Columbo show was always it was just kind of a rite of passage for television stars at the time. They'd all show up in it. But Star Trek was interesting in a lot of different ways. There was, different attempts at science fiction. And at the time, I mean, the only other thing was Lost in Space, which is a show that it's interesting. You look at its first season, it was in black and white, and yet it does have quite the dark, serious tone to it. And then they abandoned that afterwards, and it just became this silly joke of itself, which, one wonders. How it would have gone after that. But a lot of the designs and whatnot for Star Trek really broke the mold and kind of set the standards and whatnot. Because up to that, you had Flash Gordon and stuff, but you would have things like, Space Patrol and all that sort of stuff. And all the idea of a sort of military service in space was being established there. And of course, you can go right off the bat to Forbidden Planet. That movie is works easily as a Star Trek episode. It's just you just say, hey, that's a precursor to to Starfleet or the Federation or whatever. Because top to bottom, it's the same type thing. There's some weird adventure happens on this planet. This spaceship and their crew shows up to deal with it. And ultimately, it's the captain who becomes the hero of the story, and woos the girl and says, "Well, you can come live with me on my spaceship." Okay, yeah, and so it all works out. And then you could just easily see Captain Kirk having an adventure like that. And so, of course, back then, the spaceship designs were either flying saucers or rockets. And then you get to the Enterprise, which there were quite a few other designs looking back that they did. One of them was really extraordinary. They were quite the leap from the typical designs because it looked like something you would have seen in 2001, Space Odyssey, But ultimately, the one they went for, you can see it's like a combination of flying saucer and rockets, where it's like the two nacelles on the back is kind of like the rockets, and then the flying saucers in front. So quite creative in that. It was very distinctive look and design, and set itself apart from any other attempts at science fiction at the time. and had quite the impact going forward. And of course, set the standard for all future looks and designs for those ships. And then eventually they get to like the Klingon ship, which was an interesting turnaround. It's kind of, they're flipping things around, but basically they came with unique designs unto its own. It becomes recognizable. And eventually it's like, hey, this is great stuff for merchandising and all that. So a lot of ground broken in Star Trek. It achieved quite a few things just in that. And they had to start somewhere, and that's kind of where it started for those innovations and look and design. Of course, the transporter's cool and everything, but they only did that because they figured, hey, it's going to be too expensive to shoot scenes of a shuttle in the garage of the Enterprise. Because that's how they were going to do it. Just say, all right, we're going to explore this planet. Get down to the shuttle and fly down to the surface. All right. So they get down there and they fly down all that. Well, even though they eventually did shoot scenes with the shuttles and whatnot, at the time they wanted a cost-cutting feature. And they said, hey, what if they could just, teleport down from the ship? And they just got some crazy new technology that can do that. And yeah. So they do, and there you go, and it's a cool thing. They glow, and they disappear, and they reappear on the planet, and so on and so forth. And they became plot devices for so many episodes and all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, the two Kirks, when he was split in two by it and all, it gave him new ideas of what to do. However, when you break it down and you think about it, and it's not just the transporter, it's the replicators on the ship. If they want food or whatever, they put some block of matter in this replicator and rearrange its molecules so now that it's like apple pie or ice cream or something like that. But it was originally just this brick, but it's just molecules. You rearrange it to the pattern recorded in the computer where you had the molecular structure of apple pie. So now it's that, and you can consume it, and it works. This is the power of God. So it's a bit of a plot hole in that sense about it. It's like, even when Spock died, well, just stick him in the transporter. You can resurrect him with it. It's no problem solved, He's like, well, they didn't think of that. Don't think of it. Besides, it looks cool, so go with it. And so, yeah, all right. So anyway, but stuff like that. The rest, well, the phasers and all that sort of thing, and then the communicator, which of course, years later, the cell phone. Even the early cell phones had to be flip phones. Why? So it could look like the communicator. Come on, that's why they did it. But eventually it becomes more practical to be just the boring, flat little rectangles that you can't live without. But it's a computer in your hands, basically what it is. So it's like the communicator and the tricorder all in one and stuff like that, But I don't know, for the purposes of going forward in that with Trek, say it's a far more powerful machine. It could do far more than your mere phone could do back in that bygone era, the 21st century. So, yeah. But as for what they'll do to exploit Captain Kirk one more time, with William Shatner being involved, stands to reason. I'm assuming it would be something a bit more advanced or longer than what the unification video did. But a lot of that stuff that those guys did, they're very quick snippets. So, of course, it looks amazing in what they did with Spock and so on. And recreating the era and then moving them through eras of the movies, motion picture and stuff like that. It's an interesting thing of how far could you go as the technology progresses and stuff like that. but also just the overall presentation of it. It's so impressive, beyond which you can see in any of the ongoing shows. But of course, to achieve that on a TV series, I imagine would be quite the formidable challenge to present it as such. I mean, depending on how much footage you would need per episode, theoretically, and then the rest is your actual cast that goes through whatever adventure they're doing in that particular episode. Whereas footage of the ships and whatnot, and would they match up and look legitimately credible as ships that are derivative of the designs that the shows had presented over the decades, that sort of thing, which again is another thing that Secret Hideout or STD would have never even bothered to even contemplate, well, let alone attempt. And so but when you see something like that with I'm forgetting, Oitoy is the name of the company that did these videos for the Roddenberry archives, I believe. I'm probably getting it wrong, or Otoy, something like that. It's embarrassing to blank on it like that. But nevertheless, just the overall aesthetic and loyalty to the original designs and whatnot, and yet still look fantastic, which is a lot of the immediate complaint for a newer Trek show. Is like, well, you don't want it to look like some old show from the 60s and stuff like that. But design wise, and you could streamline it a little bit, touch it up here and there, but for the most part resembles it and is still workable. I mean, look, it's like Deep Space Nine did their episode where they went back in time to the Tribble episode and all that. And it was all very simple. It was very clever, with just a few lines of dialogue. And you had like Dax explaining about she was all taken with just the aesthetic of the era, the design, the fashion, the look, and all that. That's all it was. It was an aesthetic choice from that era, and that's and good enough, and then it worked. It explained it, so on and so forth. Enterprise comes along too, because they did a joke about the Klingons not looking like Klingons, and then Enterprise came up with a really cool explanation for it, and which does beg a certain storyline that one could, though I'm burnt out on any ideas or attempts of prequels or whatnot. But whatever became of that? Did you have warring offshoots of Klingons, the ones that were, influenced by the eugenics program that created Khan and whatnot? And was there like different houses and whatnot? Did they war with one another or what have you? But then again, it's like also in Deep Space Nine, they did a show where the actors who had played Klingons that had fought Kirk in the old show showed up. And then, of course, they were all old men. And they used the same names, but they looked like the Klingons you'd seen since the movie started and stuff. So one, I suppose, could argue as they aged, their actual Klingon features would become more prominent. And they didn't look so human anymore. So I suppose you could chalk it up to that. But I kind of wonder, with the eugenics influence, did this produce, a clan of Klingons who dominated and took over the empire and stuff like that? It could have been so. And this leaves a bit of blame for the influence of humanity on them for that, even though these were guys trying to steal this secret to superhuman power that they thought they had discovered within this eugenics program from Earth and all that. But anyway, the opportunities that have been lost, but what are you going to do? So anyway, there we go. There's a little picture of Captain Kirk to give me something to do while I left the camera on and I babble on nonsensically about it, just to do a stream, which says I've been on for an hour. I guess that's as the telling. So I guess we'll keep it there. So anyway, if thanks for showing up and thanks for watching. And if you've subscribed, thank you for that. And if you haven't, give it a shot. You might want to hear from me again. And check out what else I got on my channel, whether on Rumble or YouTube. Both channels have a lot of stuff. Yes, it does. So again, thank you for watching, and we'll do it again soon, probably tonight sometime. Yeah, something like that. All right, there it is. There it is, my little ending theme song, which I called early, but it's really not all that early. It's almost noon. I'm on the Central Time Zone, so yeah, it's way past my bedtime. I'm a night person. I work nights and all that, so I need to go to bed. Yeah. So sweet dreams for me, and for the rest of you, enjoy your day.